Yeah, Calvinism teaches that God determines the means as well as the ends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right,
Yes,
so
exactly.
that's libertarianism, the free will. So what about your position? You've called Calvinistic compatibilism, right, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes. Yes. And compatibilism is basically a term that means that human responsibility and freedom is compatible with the idea that God is sovereign. And what Calvinists mean by God's sovereignty is that he meticulously decrees everything that happens in history, in the world, and in people's lives. So that there's nothing that falls outside of God's decree. And that's kind of the language of historic Reformed confessions and whatnot, such as the Westminster Confession, um, chapter 3.1 talks about the decrees of God. What God has determined is going to happen. So that basically God has laid out a whole plan for history even before he created the universe, and that he will ensure by his providence that everything that he has decreed will in fact take place.
So
And
anything good, anything evil, ultimately, in God's sovereignty, has a purpose. There is no purposeless action or evil, or you take the worst thing in history or the best thing. Each was decreed before time began by God.
exactly, there's nothing that happens by chance. There's nothing that happens apart from God's, first of all, God's foreknowledge. But his foreknowledge is always tied to what he has already determined is going to take place.
Mm.
And so, really, when the Bible speaks of God's foreknowledge, it's basically a way of saying, speaking to what God already knows is going to happen, that he's already decreed is going to happen, and he's just telling us beforehand what that is. So, for example, when you look at Old Testament prophecy, or even New Testament prophecy, it's just basically a delineation of God's foreknowledge in terms of what he has decreed is going to happen. So when we read all the prophecies about Christ's birth, about his death and his resurrection, these are all things that are related to God's decree, and he has knowledge of what he is going to do in the future, and therefore prophecy is just him revealing to us and telling us what he's going to do in the future.
Yeah.
And so foreknowledge in the Calvinistic uh, understanding of Scripture is directly related to God's decree.